We are in the capital of Thailand, Bangkok, to talk about the mysterious life and disappearance of Jim Thompson, an American spy who served with the predecessor of CIA, the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, and became an influential businessman in Thailand, until his sudden disappearance, which remains an unsolved mystery, along with many other parts of his life. Welcome to Spy Spots. Jim Thompson was born in 1906 in Delaware from a wealthy family in the textile manufacturing business. Thompson had a unique combination of mental and physical talents. He studied architecture at the Princeton University, with postgraduate studies at the School of Architecture in Pennsylvania University, while more or less around the same time he was representing the United States as an athlete at the 6-meter sailing event of the 1928 Summer Olympics in Amsterdam, Netherlands. He had a great start at his professional career as an architect with Holden, McLaughlin and Associates in New York City. But after the beginning of the Second World War, he dropped all of that successful life to join the Delaware National Guard. That was in 1941. While stationed in Fort Monroe, Virginia, he became friends with Second Lieutenant Edwin Fahey Black, who introduced him to the highly secretive OSS, the predecessor of today's CIA. It didn't take long for adventurer Jim Thompson to try to join OSS, and eventually Major General Bill Donovan, the founder of OSS, known as Wild Bill, recruited him as an OSS operative. As we read in the 1998 book Jim Thompson, The Unsolved Mystery by William Warren, Black also influenced Thompson's life in another way. He introduced him to a tall, elegant ex-Powers model named Pat Travis, who succeeded where the debutantes of Wilmington, Philadelphia, and New York had failed. Besides being blonde and beautiful, she had artistic inclinations, and Thompson decided to end his bachelor life. They were married in 1942. The couple enjoyed only about 6 months of married life, mostly in Washington, before Thompson was shipped overseas as a member of an OSS group assigned to work with French forces in North Africa. From there, he later went up through Italy and into France following the invasion. His work was of a highly classified nature, so much so, indeed, that even after the war, he never discussed it with his family. But from other OSS accounts, one can assume it involved raids behind German lines, liaison with local resistance groups, and probably a good deal of personal risk. Of course, as the Second World War was heading to its end, those operations were reduced, and in 1945 he was sent to another covert mission to support the Free Thai movement that was an underground group organized, trained and equipped by OSS to provide intelligence to the Allied forces and conduct sabotage and subversive actions against the Empire of Japan. However, he wasn't very lucky with that assignment, since soon after all of that preparation, in August of 1945, Japan surrendered, basically giving the US nearly unlimited influence over Thailand, eliminating the need for complex covert and clandestine operations. So Jim Thompson's mission changed. Now it was to establish the Bangkok OSS office, basically the equivalent of today's regional CIA station. With his social and adventurous personality, Thompson had already a huge social circle, ranging from politicians, celebrities, military, even what we'd call today terrorist groups, which made him a valuable source of intelligence in Thailand. And following that, he was appointed as a military attaché in Thailand, while still covertly working for the OSS to collect intelligence for the region, while overtly representing the US military in Thailand. Although the war was over, Thompson used the Free Thai and later Free Laos groups, along with his other connections established in the previous years, to handle several crises in the border of Thailand in a covert manner, and thus avoiding escalations that could lead to geopolitical or diplomatic issues. Now, according to some sources, he stepped out of OSS and moved to the business world in around 1946, while others state that this business was more of a cover story for OSS. An excellent example of that hypothesis is from this lecture of Dr. Liu Tulmin at the International Spy Museum in 2017.
And you'll see he resigned after a year in office. And on the left is a very ordinary resignation letter. These are OSS memos, and you notice that it never says OSS, because OSS was oh so secret that they didn't even put their name on their letterhead, which I think is kind of funny. United States government is all it says. So here he's resigning, and you see his nice strong signature. But over on the other side is a much more interesting and unusual memo. And the bottom sentence is still redacted by the CIA when I requested this and got this copy after 70 years. So redacted, of course, means that they blanked it out. So they know what it says, but we don't know what it says, and I don't know what it says. It does say, the paragraph above says, Mr. Jim Thompson, formerly General Attaché, Chief of Station, at Bangkok, has returned from his post, arriving in Washington, and will not return to Siam in government service. Interesting. So what does that next sentence say? Well, I submit that from the context, it might say that he will be returning to Thailand, but under illegal cover, or meaning that he was an agent and would be an asset to the CIA, but it would not be official. But we'll never know until this is released. It is pretty unusual that after 70 years, this sentence is still not being released. And in fact, I could get nothing out of the CIA past this memo. So this is in 1947. That's pretty amazing.
To this day, though, this is classified, so it's hard to know for sure. What it is known, though, is that at the end of 1946, he was discharged from the military and, along with some other people, bought the Oriental Hotel in Bangkok, Thailand. However, due to disagreements with the other investors, he gave up his shares and moved to the other business that he was an expert at, textile. Together with George Barry, he founded the Thai Silk Company and became world-renowned as the Silk King. During that time, in 1958 specifically, Jim Thompson began his architectural masterpiece in Bangkok. Combining traditional methods with modern, finding rare materials and techniques, personally traveling all around Southeast Asia to find unique pieces to add to that architectural endeavor, and the result was this house that we're visiting in this episode. Actually, some of them were so rare that he had some serious issues with the local authorities on how he managed to obtain those ancient artifacts. The Jim Thompson House, as it's known today, is operating as a historical landmark and museum, and it's our today's spy spot. Previously we mentioned that all of that could have been a cover, but by 1958 there was no more OSS, it was CIA, and officially there is no CIA record for Jim Thompson. We say officially because during that lecture at the International Spy Museum, former CIA Chief of Disguise John Amendes stated,
well, in today's world where there are facts and there are other facts,
right,
you sort of have to weigh every word.
Exactly.
Because there are all kinds of relationships in the intelligence community that are not relationships on purpose.
Right.
They are not relationships, but still.
Yep.
I worked in Bangkok years ago. I worked for the CIA, and there were still lots of questions floating around about Jim Thompson back then. So it's part of why I'm so interested.
What was the prevailing theory at the time in the cocktail circuit?
There was never that kind of conversation that I was exposed to, but there was a file.
Right.
There is a file, and the one that I saw was enormous.
Right.
I just wonder if somebody goes after it. If anything comes out of it.
Well, I did ask for everything, everything connected with James Thompson. And
there is a similar reference to that in the book Jim Thompson, The Unsolved Mystery. A former CIA agent who prefers to remain nameless is more specific. I've seen the file of Jim Thompson, he said recently, and while it confirms that there was contact during his early years in Thailand, it also reveals that the agency regarded him as being far too liberal for its tastes, particularly on such subjects as Indochina. Contacts declined and soon stopped completely, long before he disappeared. So we have this impressive property, a very colorful character with extensive experience in covert operations, and that redacted part in his discharge order. What could he be doing? Based on that same lecture, a hypothesis is that he was an agent of influence or agent of access, meaning he was working for CIA under non-official cover to influence people for the benefit of the United States, or even used as a means for CIA to get access to those people through him. And many of those meetings were taking place in that property, are today's spy spot.
One of the reasons he's so famous, and probably one of the reasons he was an asset to the CIA, was that he entertained almost every night. Sometimes just 2 or 3 people, but often 200, 300 people. I mean, it was amazing. And anybody who was anybody in the 50s and 60s who went on an Asian tour would almost certainly stop in Thailand, and they would almost certainly be invited, if they were somebody, to go to his house. So here are some of the people that he introduced to each other, if they didn't know each other, that attended his parties, and this is just a small sample of the thousands of people. So I'm sure you can identify most of these folks, so I won't go through them all, but you can see we've got time covers here. These are Fords in the bottom middle. Truman Capote, Somerset Maugham was there. He probably had something to chat with Jim about because he was ex-MI5, the British Security Service. And Jim had clients all over the world. I mentioned movie stars. We've got movie stars. So this is Liz Taylor and Grace Kelly. They were clients of his. And he got his start by recommending...
Jim Thompson's house is a must-visit location for anyone interested in espionage history. And while we were visiting it, a new building was under construction next to it, the Jim Thompson Art Center, that includes a cafeteria, the William Warren Library, an art exhibition center, as well as a beautiful rooftop for hosting events. And next to it is Jim Thompson's house. That today also includes a restaurant. A gift shop with original silk products and more. And it's where you'll also find the OSS bar. Yes, a bar themed after the Office of Strategic Services. his mysterious and adventurous life had a similar end too. On March 26, 1967, at the age of 61, while on a walk in Malaysia's Cameron Highlands, he disappeared and was never found again, making it one of the most mysterious disappearances to this day. And although several experts have tried to shed light to it, to this day there has been no conclusive answer as to what happened to him. And after years of search attempts and investigations, in 1974 he was declared dead in absentia. In 2017, a new documentary titled "Who Killed Jim Thompson?" concludes that he was slain by rebels from the Communist Party of Malaya after he arrived in the jungle and repeatedly attempted to set up a meeting with a Communist Party Secretary General, at the time the most wanted man in Malaysia. The documentary hints that he was there on a CIA mission under non-official cover. However, there are no conclusive evidence to support this hypothesis, so technically speaking, his disappearance remains a mystery. There are numerous more scenarios that have been published over the years, including that it was a deliberate extraction, as former CIA Chief of Disguise John Amendes said.
I've read a number of books on this case, and I've always thought that the idea that he might have self-disappeared himself is always kind of glossed over. But as a trained intelligence officer, he would know very well how to put a scenario like that together. He had been to the Moonlight Cottage previously, so he would know the terrain. He could have even made some arrangements. He could have put a bicycle here. He could have done whatever he needed to do. But basically, I mean, today we would call it going off the grid. If Jim Thompson wanted to just disappear without a trace, he would have left his cigarettes. He would have left his meds, his passport, because he had more cigarettes, more meds, more passports, and he would have just evaporated. It's how a lot of intelligence agencies will do an exfiltration. People just are gone and no one knows where they went. So do you ever go back and examine that possibility that he wanted to not be found, that he wanted to disappear? He's depressed, he's not well. There had to be motivation, and that would be a separate conversation. But do you totally rule it out?
No. I think that's one of the ones that's possible, but I would say unlikely.
But maybe that disappearance of Jim Thompson needs a dedicated episode, so stay tuned for it after our next visit to Malaysia. To this day, the spy spot attracts important figures and serves as a unique espionage site hidden inside the center of Bangkok, reminding us of OSS and CIA's clandestine operations in Thailand in a very unique and remarkable way. It's also easy to see how impactful such locations remain to this day's geopolitical landscape by checking the news. Like in November 2022, when French President Emmanuel Macron visited Thailand, part of his official visit included a private tour in Jim Thompson's house, reminding us how an OSS operative and suspected CIA NOC officer who established the first American spy station in Bangkok and strangely disappeared in Malaysia plays a role even in today's geopolitics. It goes without saying that if you're ever in Thailand, we highly recommend you visiting this special spy location, hidden in plain sight among the busy center of Bangkok. A clear demonstration of how nothing is as it seems.